This will be the fourth and final of my 4 videos from June 7, 2020, highlighting the plants in my garden at Calliope Corner. As you can see behind me are the 6 raised beds which the previous owners had installed for organic vegetable gardening, and the backyard here was mostly used for just the food. The front was mostly flowers. As you could see from if you watched the previous videos, I have mixed that up a bit. I got some tomatoes and beans, okra, corn, and sunflowers in the front. And back here I put in some perennials and flowers as well. I'll start the backyard here against the north side of the house, where there used to be 2 tall bamboos, supposedly a clumping, non-spreading bamboo, but they do spread just very slowly. Anyway, I put in 2 of the salvaged Oregon grapes that I dug up over at Alan's house, and they seem to be doing fine. And another native that I put in here is this Delphinium trolifolium. This is the happiest of the 4 so that I planted. One of them actually died, but it likes the shady spot, and it's actually put on some follicles there, the fruits there called follicles, which hopefully will spread seed around. I put in a couple of sunflowers here, which is silly. It doesn't get any sun back in here. And after planting all those nasturtium seeds in the front by the gate, I had a bunch left over, so I scattered them in a row here, and they've all just started to sprout the past couple of days. And also in this little area over here, I put in a parsley that my neighbor gave me, and she also gave me some borage over here. And there's some more nasturtiums coming up over here. In this plot here, I originally had an idea just native plants, and I did put some native plants in here. About 5. There's a Romer's fescue, and camas. There's that aster in the genus Symphyiotrichum, twinberry honeysuckle, the checker mallow with small pink flowers. This is campestris, and a red flowering currant. And then back in the corner there, which will become a small tree, is a blue elderberry, native Sambucus mexicanus variety cerulean. But because things are still small and I had spring fever, I put in a lot of other things. My neighbor Lisa gave me a bunch of plants that volunteered in her yard, so I put in this Gloriosa daisy, which is a Rudbeckia, and then I put in some vegetables over here. There's 3 golden zucchinis that are an easy harvest because they don't have spines. This one over here, I thought I'd lost to the slugs because they had eaten most of the way through the stem, and it only had 2 leaves. It still only had its 2 seed leaves at that point, and it flopped over. But it healed, and roots were enough, and it's come back quite nicely. Throughout this area, I've left the yarrow, and it'll provide an attractant for the honeybees, which are needed to pollinate the squash. All around the brush pile here, because I had extra seeds, I put in string beans, moonflowers, and some sweet peas. Only a few of the sweet peas actually emerged, and the idea is that they will grow up and cover the brush pile with flowers. The far corner there, I put in another Pike's Peak giant sunflower, and along the back here, which is a nice sunny spot, 3 cucumber hills. This is a F1 hybrid called that's a squash, Alibi, which is a pickling cucumber. It can also be eaten fresh. There's the Gloriosa daisy, and then I put in 3 hills of a pumpkin called Naked Bear. This one plant is growing amazingly fast. So it started these seeds about 2 weeks later. It's called Naked Bear because the seeds are largely hulless. It's good for eating, pies, and of course harvesting the seeds. female and this hummingbird came to the mallow. And then I put in the 2 columbines. I constantly step on that one. And then some plants, I planted some sunflowers out in the middle over there, and then I realized if they grow up tall, they're going to shade the cucumbers, so I transplanted them and put them out here in the middle. They don't look like much now, but in the late summer, there'll be these huge 15, 16 foot tall sunflowers there. Here's one of the special plants of the yard. This is a gift by my neighbors to the south. You're allowed to have 4 plants, and he was given 5, so he's also given me nutrients, a special fertilizer that's formulated for marijuana. If this does survive the year and produces buds, I will have a 10-year supply. I don't smoke it very often. I put in this raspberry here in the middle of what used to be lawn. That's a primocane from this year, so it'll fruit from that next year. It'll still be small. I might consider adding a second plant here. And then here come the raised beds. So I've put in tomatoes and peppers that I started from seed in almost every bed, plus a few other things. There are at least 2 marigolds that I've put into each bed, and then I've seeded and reseeded a lot of short, fast growing crops, mostly cool season things. Some of them are doing great, some of them not so great. The cilantro here, after putting on just a few pairs of leaves, decided to bolt. So this is supposed to be a slow bolting variety, which is a lie. My first carrots were almost a complete failure. I sowed very carefully, very spaced individual seeds, and I got 11 carrots out of it. They'll be ready to eat maybe in a couple of weeks. So the next time I sowed carrots, I sowed hundreds of seeds together, and they all sprouted. So I'm going to have lots of carrots this summer. I've already harvested the mizuna in this bed. I just chopped them off at the base, and there's one that's already growing back. And I had scattered seeds of spinach and turnips and bok choy. And this is an escarole for a salad. And I've had to harvest all the bok choy. In this bed, I put in this pepper called Ascent. I started 2 pots of each kind. In each little pot, I put 2 seeds, and everything sprouted. So I have 4 individuals of 4 kinds of peppers that I started seed from territorial. And this is a Thai pepper, so a very hot one that'll be used for making green curry paste. That's a volunteer sedge that I just left in there for the fun of it. Here's one of the marigolds, and tiny little flower bud already on it. Another one of the peppers. I just spaced them out here appropriately, and I put carrots in everywhere. When I re-sowed this the second time, a whole bunch of things came up, so I just transplanted them over here. And here's some of the mizuna still. It's good in salads, good for stir frying. Turnips are good. Spinach is healthy. Here's house finches feeding on the edge of the spinach. And over there, I have a spinach where it's being eaten by a cutworm, a moth called Noctua pronuba, the large yellow underwing, which there were hundreds here in the winter, but I managed to find a lot of them. Let's see. Oh, and the pepper that I put in over here, right here, is an ancho pepper. And I put in a Thai basil here that I started from seed. They did not like their little peat pots and didn't grow much past the first pair of leaves for weeks. So I gave up and put them in the ground, and they finally realized that they can grow. My seeds from territorial arrived really late. They were so overwhelmed that they took 6 weeks to give me my seed order. So some of the tomatoes I started from seed I bought from them were really slow, so I had extras that I put out front. This one here is this is the bush Roma called Supremo. And then these 2 over here will be indeterminate ones called, it's an heirloom marriage, Marzinera. And if I get tomatoes from those, I'll be very lucky at this late date. And here are 2 of 10 melon plants. This has been a dream of mine for a long time, to grow cantaloupes of various kinds, and I have 6 different varieties. This one here is called Sivan, and then mixed throughout here I have 3 different plants of the ground cherry, which my grandmother grew in her garden back in the 70s. It's related to tomatillo. I remember my mom got some seed and we had some in the garden in North Albany back in the early 80s as well. And then you don't see it anywhere until the past few years. It's been marketed from Peru as this magic new fruit called goldenberry. But news for them. We've known about it for decades here. Oh, actually this turnip leaf is shading one of my, I don't know why that grew over there, shading one of the ground cherries, which has doubled in size in the past 3 days. Here's one of the 2 kinds of single marigolds I planted here. This is a snow pea called Oregon Sugar Pod 2, and I harvested a whole bunch the other day, and it looks like I need to harvest some more now. This is lettuce that I started from seed indoors, and then I put some 3 different, oh, that one disappeared. I had a 3rd Swiss chard growing there. Something got it. I reseeded turnips and bok choy here and there throughout the yard in the raised beds. These are tomatoes I started from seed that I bought at the store since my territorial seed order was so late. This is called pink Berkeley tie-dye. The big red and green striped tomato. Here's another Thai basil. And this pepper here is a bell pepper called Lady Bell. I have 4 of them in here. This cantaloupe is called Charente. These are actually seeds that I had saved from last year, and I built this trellis for them. So it's going to go up with trellis and then onto the wired trellis that I built across here for them, and the whole row of sweet peas that I started in early March. They're just about to start blooming, so I hope to get a few flowers before the cantaloupe smother them. I was impatient with my tomatoes growing indoors, so I bought 3 tomato plants from the store. This is a pink tie-dye Berkeley before I realized that it was the same variety that I had started indoors. And then this is a San Marzano, which is one of the parents of the marriage Marzinero. One of my Thai basils that didn't do so well is finally taking off. There were some volunteer hollyhocks, which I'll get rid of. This is another bell pepper. This one's called Gourmet. Got 4 of them in here as well. And here's a regular Italian basil, marigold. These 2 peppers I started from seed that I brought with me from Peru, and it's like a wild type Capsicum annuum. Little tiny round peppers, very hot, very good flavor. They call it ojo de pescado, which means fish eye. This is the one honeydew that's sprouted, so I only have 1 plant of the honeydew, and it's called orange silverware. And then these 2 melons here are Alvaro F1 hybrid. Let's see, in this plot over here, these are tomatoes I started from seed called Indigo Rose. Again, they're so much farther ahead of the others because I bought the seed at the store before my territorial seeds arrived. And that melon there is called a Minnesota Midget, and I just have 1 of those as well, and it's going to climb up its own little trellis onto the wall there. Oh, I started some more stuff in here. I put some more Swiss chard in here. There's Italian basil. And since my Thai basil that I started indoors was doing so poorly, I put some seed in here, and they actually are I bet you're going to take off and outshine the transplanted ones. The marigolds, it's almost ready to bloom. This fabulous tomato here I bought as a start from a local farm stand. It's called Oregon Spring. It's developed at Oregon State and is a bush tomato. So I determinate type, and it already has quite a few green tomatoes in there. And I suspect they might be ripe in another 2.5 weeks or so. It's uniquely developed for the cool springs we have here, or can have. I put in some okra, which is not too happy. It doesn't like it cool, likes it hot, hot, hot. And so it's been attacked by aphids and doesn't do well. I added some lobelia just for color to the edge here, and German chamomile. So what's going on in this plot here? That's about it. Got some more chamomile, and there's some neem oil that I sprayed on the tomato to hopefully to ward off any insects. I think it's going to do fine without it. The little black flea beetles were attacking it pretty voraciously. And then this is a bed where I put the onions that Lisa gave me. My neighbor had bought a wad of seedling Walla Walla sweets, a packet of 100, and she handed me a handful, and it turned out to be 40 of them. And they're almost all still alive and doing well. And then I've been sowing and re-sowing quick ripening crops like these radishes, which are ready already. This is the second one. This is the third row of radishes, and these lettuce didn't take off so well. I only have 4 out of a whole row. More cilantro. Hopefully I'll get some more cilantro out of this than the other. I've got this is a volunteer potato. I have no idea if it started from a seed or a bit of potato that was in there somehow. Here is a row of beets. This is Kyoga variety, which I've had issues with a beet leaf miner, a fly that lays its egg in little clusters on the undersides of the leaves. And every day I go over and look under every leaf and squish the eggs, yet somehow I've managed to miss a few almost every day. It seems. So I actually haven't had to squish a larva inside the leaf in about 4 or 5 days. I've seen the fly a few times, but I haven't gotten a photo of it. It looks like a small house fly, but I'll go through this again later this morning or this afternoon. Here's some basil I have in here. Also some more carrots. There's some more, what is this, arugula. I planted back into here. There's another patch of lettuce which I'm currently eating. And this arugula I'm currently eating. This is the second batch of arugula. This is the third batch of arugula. This is the fourth batch of radishes. And I have 2 more melons here, and this is a variety called Athena. I don't remember anything about it, but it struck me at the time, the seed. Here's my Cascadia sugar snap pea, which is delicious. I just harvested a whole bunch the other day, and it looks like there's already a bunch more to harvest. They really like this weather. And I have 2 more ground cherries in here, so I have a total of 5 ground cherries that I think will be giving me lots of wonderful fruit in September, and not before. Here's another clematis and a trellis that I built, which I need to brace. It's being pulled to the left by the weight of that clematis because they're attached to the top. Over here, this is actually where I planned on planting my pumpkins, but I ended up putting in a Hubbard squash called Red Curie here. 3 mounds, 2 plants each. They seem to be very happy. It's not as sunny of a spot as I thought, thanks to this plum tree, which has 1 plum on it. But in order to attract pollinators, I planted some pollinating plants in here. This is the most advanced of the cosmos that I started from seed, and it's already got a nice bud on it. I planted 3 of them over here. I bought this native scrophularia called figwort, although it was sold to me as bee flower because bees do like it a lot. This cute little, it's actually in the same family as foxglove and snapdragon, one of their few native Scrophulariaceae. Everything else has been taken out of that family. And this is our native aster again, the Symphyotrichum. And then my neighbor gave me some more Gloriosa daisies, which I planted over here to attract more pollinators. Here's my Marionberry hedge, and oh, the fruits are just starting to turn already. And I'm going to have pounds and pounds of Marionberries. And just like the thornless blackberry, they put up these primocanes in the spring, which have no flowers. So there's this primocane, they lie low and grow very fast. And this coming winter, when all of these fruit-bearing floricanes die, I'll cut them off down at the ground, train these up, back up on the trellis, and here is the floricane, or the primocane from last year. So they're already looking a bit worn and beat, but this is just, I strung this up here in February, and then starting in March you could see the sprouts of the floricanes coming up of last year's primocane, and that's how most berries seem to do it. Some berries apparently will fruit on the tips of their primocanes, like this one might be doing that. This might be a primocane with just a few flowers at the tip. Let's see what else is here. Here's some of the columbines that I planted. There's a compost pile that I made from all the stuff I pulled from the front beds. It's not all dead, even though I covered it with plastic, but it was a nice hidey spot for the garter snakes the past couple of months. Here are the purple bearded irises that I planted out front. I took them out of this one spot here and have twice as many plants as there are here now. Two kinds of strawberries here. I have, this is one that I bought at the store. You're supposed to not let them fruit the first year, but I am going to eat that crap out of it. Here's a moonflower that I planted. This will be a vine that'll grow up this post here and hopefully provide some nice summer blooms. Here's one of two different kinds of potatoes I put in grow sacks, which are very happy. A native red flowering currant, which is not so happy because a mole burrowed right underneath it and I had to pull it up, put it in a pot for another couple of weeks, and I repotted it. The mole is still digging here and there in the yard. This is an herb pot with easy reach of the back door with thyme, oregano, and parsley, although the parsley is going to seed now. And one of my favorite fragrances is gardenia, so I had to buy a gardenia plant as soon as I could, and it is put on a ton of new growth. This is all fresh new growth, and it's very happy. This is my most recent sowing, and for the late summer, early fall harvest, these are leeks. This is, oh, it's already sprouting, is a cauliflower, and this is these are Brussels sprouts. So these will be things that I'll harvest in maybe October, and then in July and August I'll sow again, and those will be ones that I harvest in January, February, and March next year. And then over here I have my pansies, which have been very happy, and I'm constantly deadheading them so they continue blooming. And over here I planted another native Ceanothus cuneatus. There's the bush tit family coming in. Oh my gosh, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 bush tits. They've fledged. Here's another figwort, calendula I started from seed. This was a volunteer strawberry from one of the raised beds I moved into this pot, and I guess you're supposed to cut the runners off to keep them in balance, but there's only 3 plants in there, so I'm not sure where I'll put them all. And here's the other potato. And then I guess this is the last bit. I transplanted this coneflower from the front yard as well as one of the 20 or so columbines from the front yard. And that is the last of the tour of Calliope Corner.